Alright, you saw the title. This should be interesting. This is how I went from $11 an hour doing data entry to making over $200K as a lead Shopify developer. And I had no degree, didn't study any data structures and algorithms, and I didn't know React or any web development for that matter. So just to put a few of the doubters to shame, here is my mint that I'm going to refresh. Get this set up. You can see last 6 months since I actually started tracking in Mint here. You can see the total. You can also Google my name, find me on LinkedIn, some of the companies I've worked for, recommendations, and I do a lot of mentoring as well on the side, so you can see some stuff on Code Mentor. So I'm not only going to tell my story, but I'm going to get into the two biggest mistakes that people make when trying to land a web developer job. So mistake number one being they're learning the wrong topics. They're studying algorithms, they're studying a whole bunch of things that they may not actually need for the role. The next thing is essentially not knowing how to land the job interview or get through the job interview process. So I put a lot of time putting this guide together. If you got any distractions going on, put your phone on mute, do what you got to do to focus. It's going to be really hard to do the studying and focus that you need to do to get a dev job if you can't focus for like 30 minutes or so. So anyways, why should you listen to me? How do I know the stuff I'm talking about? Well, like I said, at the age of 20, I was able to get a Shopify developer role here, and I was making around $60K a year. Again, no degree, and I just kind of brute forced my way into it. The next thing that I actually did after leaving that company is I built my own development firm. You can look into that as well. And yeah, we specialize in Shopify, of course. And I actually left that development firm and now am a private consultant where I'm a lead Shopify developer. And you could see that on LinkedIn as well. So anyways, enough of that. Let's get right into the two biggest mistakes that people make. So learning the wrong things. Everyone seems to think that you need to know all the modern frameworks and a ton of different programming languages. They also think you need to study data structures, algorithms, go through Algo Expert, whatever they are suggesting. I would recommend going after the specific skill set that you're interested in doing. If it's web development, you need to go even further and pick an industry for web development or something like that, and become proficient in that industry. So that's kind of the short explanation of that. If you're still thrown off because you're seeing things like this, that's all good. I mean, there's a ton of ridiculous job postings about knowing AI, being a full stack developer as a junior, and whatever it is. Ignore it, essentially. Ignore all of that and continue through the process. So that's kind of the first thing, and of course I'm going to go through this in my story and put some real examples to everything that I'm saying here. But effectively, number one is learning the wrong topics. Number two is not knowing how to land the job interview or pass that process. So the first thing there is most people say it's a numbers game. You need to send out as many resume and applications as you can, and essentially play it like a numbers game. The reality is, yes, you need to send out a lot of job applications, but it's more about quality over quantity. So like I was saying, if you're studying specific topics, you want to focus on applying for those jobs. We'll get into my story of how I sent out hundreds of applications, landed like one interview, and then made some of these tweaks, was able to send out less than 20 applications and get multiple interviews. So we'll get into that in a second. And then, really the message here is if you've sent hundreds out, just stop. Something needs to change. The approach needs to be tweaked. And I did want to show something that's pretty cool too. Once you do get to a certain almost caliber, what happens is companies just end up reaching out to you, right? Like here's the VP of MagnaFlow reaching out to me for a specific project. Here's a CEO from she's got a skincare brand that she's actually on TV and created her own skincare brand. She reached out and worked on some projects for her. But that's kind of the short explanation of those mistakes. Let's roll right into the story, which I think is one of the most productive parts of this guide here. So starting out, I was, like I said, doing data entry. I was in college, 20 years old, and my parents took me to upstate New York, told me, look, we're going to move here. And I started to realize, like, okay, I'm interested in some sort of tech. I think I want to do programming. I was going to school for computer science at the time. And when I went to that town, I saw one street light and straight farmland. So I was like, all right, my career's over basically, and I need to stay in California if I'm gonna actually make this career work. So while I was working this data entry job, which they didn't even have the respect to call it data entry or what it was, they called it listing coordinator. Let's see here, and this is me back then. What I realized is some of the data entry tasks were super repetitive. So what I did is I went onto YouTube, studied a little bit of Python, and followed some tutorials on how to automate. So using that skill set, I was able to automate my job in like 2 months, and just give some more story there. What I would do is take in these big shipments of shoe boxes. So there would be hundreds of shoe boxes, and I would need to go through and document all the information on each shoebox, put it into a spreadsheet, and then take that spreadsheet and put it into eBay and Amazon so the company could sell online. What I realized is these boxes had barcodes, and you could essentially feed these barcodes into a third-party service, and that would tell you all the information of the shoe. So what we did is we bought like a $20 scan gun, and I went around scanning the shoe boxes into a spreadsheet just with the barcode, and I had a script that would wait for new cells in the spreadsheet and do a lookup through this third-party service, fill out the information in the spreadsheet, and it turned this job that would take 5 hours a day per week into a few hours a week altogether. I would go through and scan all the items really proficiently. So what was interesting there is I'd be rolling around in my chair because it was a warehouse, and most of the other people would be picking and packing and handling the shipping and things like that. But I'd just be writing code, and my boss kind of barely knew what I was doing. And nonetheless, he was really cool and encouraged me to write code. So eventually, I started applying to jobs. Other jobs, and I thought this is going to be super easy. I was able to get professional experience, and who's going to turn me down like with this experience, right? Well, 300 applications later, one job interview came in, and it was for a QA position. That QA position, I guess, wasn't that well suited for programmers, people that wanted to get into software engineering long term. The guy looked at me and said, "This isn't going to work out. You're going to want to go off and code other things. We just need someone to write very simple code to check a couple tasks here and there." I told him, "Look, really need a job, man. I think this is a good fit." And it didn't really make a big difference there. So what I realized is sending out hundreds of applications to every job is just mindless and not going to work. So I started watching all the new job postings that came in, looking for some sort of edge, some sort of pattern. And what I noticed is web development was the biggest area of programming at the time. Again, this is 5 years back. And also e-commerce was this industry that just kept showing up. So I thought about it a little, and I'm like, okay, well, we sell on eBay, we sell on Amazon. I'm going to gear my resume towards the fact that I guess I'm an e-commerce developer, and I'll pick up web development if it happens, right? So I applied to a whole bunch of jobs, actually like 20, and I was able to land 2 interviews from there. One of the companies that I interviewed for ended up giving me the position, and that interview process was actually quite straightforward. Because of this industry, what people cared about was an interest and just the core skill set. And effectively, that's what I found. They did put up some problems on the whiteboard, but we're talking about 2 for loops. Really, really simple problems to solve, nothing like advanced data structures or algorithms that you might be studying on leak code and all that. So that was really cool to see. And let's see, I got like a couple pictures here. This is my workspace when I did land the job. I had like a Google Glass. I love this trackball mouse. I still use trackball mouses today, which is kind of funny. I even game with them. But at the end of the day, I was really happy. I was able to travel. I was just able to travel to Switzerland with my mom, and we also checked out like Monaco. Walked out of our hotel, saw this. It's super humbling to walk out of your hotel, see a fleet of supercars. Kind of inspirational. But yeah, so that was kind of that role. I did that for 2.5 years until I left and tried becoming a contractor. So that was an interesting journey. I went on to Upwork, decided to build up my profile, and eventually I did start landing contracts. I took a massive pay cut in the beginning, honestly, but I was able to start landing contracts eventually. And what I realized is I was even, had more contracts than I knew what to do with after not too long. So when that started to happen, I partnered with a few guys and we put together that brand that I showed a second ago. Let's see, called Trovatera. So this is the e-commerce development firm that we put together. It was really cool. Got to build out a team of developers there and work on some super fun projects. At some point, I would leave that company and decide to become a consultant on my own. I had been a part of hiring process. I had solved some really hard problems, and nowadays I go into companies and help them with very specific problems and lead development teams. So that's kind of what I do these days, and my backstory. When I got that developer role, most important thing that I kind of left out in the story, the first developer job was a $60,000 a year developer job. It was a huge jump, going from $11 an hour to $60,000 a year. I was able to support myself. I was able to, build an awesome gaming setup and home office that I love. And I mean, that was kind of the result of just becoming an entry-level developer, which is really awesome. Moving forward, once I had the development firm, things started to go up and I broke 6 figures. And, like I mentioned, these days we're in the multi-6 figures, just barely. But that's kind of where we're at now with the story. So I know I ran through that super quickly, but the real purpose of this video was to hopefully give some insight on how I accomplished what I accomplished, and to also get a couple people on the phone and help them through what they're going through. So if you're interested in learning how to become a Shopify developer, you can go ahead, click the button below, schedule a call. We'll go from there, completely free, so there's no risk in any way. It'll be a 15-minute call where we maybe take a look at your resume, show you how to get your resume on the top of the stack so you have a much higher chance of getting the interview, and how to target and specifically get these companies to reach back out to you.